Good evening and welcome to the April 28th workshop of the Hillsborough Town Board. Before we go any further, I want to call out that we have a perpetual resolution recognizing Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So that is not on the consent agenda later, but it is a perpetual resolution that we honor every year. Are there any changes to the agenda other than adding as item 6D, feedback to Central Pines Council of Government on proposed legislation regarding development?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Megan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and next up, number 3, is a public hearing on the closeout of the Community Development Block Grant. Coronavirus, and Matt Eford will do that conversation.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. Tonight's public hearing is one of the final closeout steps for the CDBG CV grant. It was for $600,000. The town utilized to provide emergency housing assistance through Orange County. 10% of the funds were used for administration to pay Orange County to administer the program, and the remaining 90% or $540,000 was used for direct assistance to residents of Hillsborough. The packet contains statistics about the utilization of the grant funds. And as I said, now the board needs to hold a public hearing and receive any comments from the public if there are any. This was advertised over the last 6 weeks, several times in the News of Orange and the News Observer, and no comments were received from to staff from the public. Before I turn it over for you for the public hearing, I do want to recognize Margaret Houth for applying for, securing, and getting these funds out the door, and the Orange County housing staff for administering the program on our behalf. And with that, I'll let you take.
Thank you, Matt. Is there anyone here in the audience here to speak at this public hearing on this matter? Thank you. Anybody on the board have questions for staff about the origin of that opportunity and how the monies were spent, or any questions about the data that was presented in the packet? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Evelyn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, number 4, we have an appointment to the planning board, reappointment of John Giglia for a 3-year term ending April 30th, 2028. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to reappoint John Biglia for 3-year term ending April 30th. Second.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Evelyn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. And next, items on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Thank you, Kathleen. Second. Thank you, Rob. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. And moving right along, item number 6 on the agenda, in-depth discussion and topics. The first one up tonight is annexation interest letter for 618 and 700 NC Highway 86 North, and Molly will present.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor Bell, good to see you. So tonight we have an annexation interest letter for 618 and 700 NC 86 North. The properties together are about 5.68 acres total, and they're zoned light industrial in the town's extraterritorial jurisdiction, so only annexation is proposed, no rezoning. And they're requesting annexation in order to develop a 40,000 square foot light industrial building for Green Zone, which is a textile recycler and wholesale distributor of secondhand apparel. The property fronts on an 8-inch water line in the NC Highway 86 North right of way. Properties do not front on sewer, but the applicant is intending to build a business on a septic system. And with us tonight, we have Brian Van Horn with Bobbitt Construction. He's working with the property owner on the site plan submittal for Green Zone. And so I will turn that over to him if you would like to say anything. And also, Sarah, would you help me pull up the, oh, just on the bottom. And I'm just pulling up the maps for everybody for reference.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And please state your name again.
I am Brian Van Horn,
Brian.
Bobbitt Construction, and I'm also an Orange County resident. Thankful to be here and excited for our client who is looking forward to constructing this facility and serving the area in a better way in their textile recycling business. No big surprises here. It's a light industrial use and we do have a septic system planned, so we won't need to be tying into sewer. But we do need the water for sprinkler system for the building primarily and the potable water for offices and so forth. Be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. I think we're all familiar with the property there past the.
If I could just ask a question
And-
for clarification, has this property been before us before for housing? Do you remember, Catherine?
So there was there was a little bit of a community advocacy for the town to maybe purchase that property. Because of its proximity to Fairview Park and maybe somehow combine it there was not an official interest, just kind of chatter, people writing in and asking if the town would please purchase that property.
I just remember some property close to that wanted to be, it wanted to be a housing development, and that's what crossed my
I think it
mind.
was
Do you
north
remember
Further north.
I think it was further north.
further north?
Yeah, I don't remember any applications for that particular.
No, I don't either, but I was wondering, it seemed so familiar to me that it was too close to Fairview and it was gonna bother the residents, and this is different. I realized it.
Okay, we'll start with you. Go ahead.
I do, and this is just. This is my question, and, cause I don't have clear understanding of septic use for industrial. Because, and especially with textiles, because of dyes and chemicals and concerns for leaching. And Fairview being that we dump, they're just very sensitive for soil contaminations and that sort of thing. And I don't know if you're the best person or can you address, because I don't know enough, like I said, about industrial septic, but anytime with chemicals, dyes going into the ground, there's concerns.
Sure. So, Brian Greenbow, Engineering Service Manager. So, the septic system is a biological process, so it uses existing biology to, to
Right.
eliminate biological oxygen demand, BOD, and so that the groundwater is safe to discharge. That's something that the Orange County has to review. The applicant would have to commit to in meeting what is effectively the same as our industrial pretreatment ordinance. That would go through Orange County, and Orange County would have to enforce and ensure that whatever they're doing is, consistent with the septic state or the state statutes as well as the Orange County septic ordinance. So they do enforce that. They will require the applicant to make certain attestations during their application. And if, for example, the creek turns, red or something because of dyes or whatever, that would be a violation, and Orange County would be the one that would enforce that because it's a failing septic system.
Because I understand it's biologic, but that's where I'm not clear, and you may not know, and it may not be known now, and it may be just in the county stands on some of the chemical pieces of, the recycling, because you're talking about breaking down and rebuilding. What our risks are in that ground contamination, especially, again, very sensitive to that neighborhoods would already.
Sure, yeah, obviously it would depend on what the applicant does and flushes down the drain, so to speak, and that's, that's outside of Hillsborough's jurisdiction, it's not something we would enforce, but I'm certainly can let the applicant kind of speak to what they've done so far with Orange County's Health Department. I see Max got his hand up.
I would like to say, to respond to that the process is just sorting and baling of the clothes and so forth. And then they get shipped out. There's not any processing of actual textiles with water or anything
So
like
we're
that.
shipping to where?
They will be taking this some to the wholesale, and I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
I mean, it's-
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I haven't been involved in those details.
Yeah, thank you. You actually answered my questions. You know, when I did some research, you know, there's two ways of doing textile recycling, one being mechanical, which is literally just sorting into the various fibers and colors, and the other is water. But from what I could tell, and just doing a Google, this is, you know, basically a distribution point where you know, textiles that have been recycled come to be sorted and then often goes elsewhere. That's not the size of a not a plot, but it's not, the parcel is not large enough for something uber big.
Yeah, and any actual
Like
processing of the materials would happen somewhere. So,
Matt, any other questions? Evelyn, do you have any questions?
No, could you show me where this is probably stupid, I was on the health board. Can you show me where the septic system would be?
yes, we did a lot of analysis, and it will be on the other side of the creek in the northwest corner of the site, that
I
area.
don't exactly get where.
That far corner right up here.
Near the motor pool?
Oh, I see,
Yeah, so there'll have to be
I can
a
see.
pipe that goes
It would be
an underground.
there. That was that.
There's kind of a low wet area where there's some buffers, some stream buffers.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong side of it. What's here and what's there, okay.
So how does it get over under the stream?
I expect it'll be an underground pipe, retrench.
Evelyn, did you have any other questions?
No, I was on the wrong, I'm thinking about that. That when somebody wanted to do a development of houses and. Never mind.
Megan, do you have any other questions?
No, I appreciate the, Commissioner Hughes and Ferguson's, comments, so I'm all good.
Rob, any other questions?
That was my only question really, was the septic, and, you addressed it. Thank you.
And so all we're looking for you tonight is just direction. If we wanted to vet any concerns with you about annexation, and if there are none, then you know, giving the applicant direction to move forward with a formal petition.
Thank you. So I have a question.
Oh, please, yeah.
And that is regarding satellite annexation. Does this have a meaningful impact on our reserve?
No, so I checked that with Shannon first to make sure that we were still well under the 10%, and we are, I think. It's somewhere in and around, we still have 184 acres available, and this is only about 5. So it doesn't have a meaningful impact on the satellite.
Nor on future large
No,
projects that will be annexed in the next several years?
yeah, no.
How many acres did you say that was?
There's 184.5 acres left, that can be annexed in satellite.
And kind of went towards a percentage.
So it's around, I have to do the math, I believe it's around 6% the maximum is 10%. And again, that's for the satellite or the stuff that doesn't touch town limits, anything that's actually adjacent to town limits would count towards that 10%.
And we are, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
chime in. We are keeping a very close eye on this, RTLP being a satellite annexation, as well as any other opportunities that may present themselves. We do want to make sure that we still have enough satellite annexation in reserves. We're also looking at the potential ability for us to annex some of our own properties, as well as working with Orange County to annex some of their properties. And they do have a ton of contiguous property that was never annexed because they're Orange County and they're not a taxpayer, and we've kind of given them, you know, water and sewer service. Just historically anyways, so there are probably some opportunities for us to work on annexing our own properties and Orange County properties to create a bigger contiguous town limits area so that we do have opportunities in the future.
Thank you. And so just to reiterate, tonight you're looking for, input from the board if we're interested in seeing this go forward with the regular process.
Yes, that's correct.
Does the board have any concerns about it moving forward? I think it sounds like there's unanimous consent that it should.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to say, fast fashion is a really big issue, and anything that diverts in a for-profit way, textiles that often get discarded, and out of landfill is really, really important.
Yeah, right.
And for the applicant, Brian, you're aware of Orange County's multiple efforts with the Solid Waste Advisory Group about diverting textiles from landfills. So there's a broad interest in helping with that kind of business model. So you might be able to plug into what the Orange County Solid Waste Advisory Group has done in the past, helping divert textiles from the landfills.
Okay, I'll look into that. I appreciate it. Yeah, I know that they like this location because they have a route. They test one or more of their boxes on the way here.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item B, presentation from Brian and Melissa Schreiner on development issues for the property at 644 McAdams Road. Shannon is going to give us a presentation. I believe the property owners are here as well.
Yes, they are. So this is some information provided by the Shriners. They have put together a very robust, fantastic report. So I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time. I'm going to let them come up and kind of outline some of the development issues with the property. They have been working on this project for a while. It's not been without challenge. The property, they'll show you kind of the aerial, but it does have right-of-way frontage. However, that's an unimproved right-of-way. We've seen this around town. We've got an older town, so we do have paper streets where right-of-way was platted and recorded, but maybe just the road was never built. It's just been kind of a dirt or a gravel path with access to the property. And so I'm gonna go ahead and outline, you let them outline the issues, and they had several kind of follow-up requests at the end. Item 3 kind of deals with planning, the other more kind of utility street construction. So I think that follow-up questions, Bryant and I will tag team. So I'm gonna go ahead and let the applicant come up and.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, board members. I'm Brent and Melissa. Some of you have seen me before with other planning meetings, and I appreciate your time. We are here asking for your help. We have got a lot of help from planning and utilities, and we've been very thankful. And we just have kind of a weird thing. So I want to kind of go through some of these slides to help you visualize the challenges we're going through. And the challenge is not with the people. The people are awesome. It's with specifics of our property and how some of these things apply. So we're the owners. We've been working here for the last 9 years. Our property is R10, residential 10. It's 0.85 acres. And we're just trying to do a little house with a little ADU. And it's the ADU that is just kicking us in the gut. The timeline up there, just hitting the wave tops. It's been just over 2 years that we started working with the planning department before we bought the property to find out the skeletons in the closet. And they helped us identify that, and utilities helped us identify that. And we thought we had it all solved because we're gonna pay for the new water and sewer hookup. We know those extra expenses, but then the ADU became a challenge. We ended up detaching or making our detached plans attached. That was a challenge. Then it came to surface last year in the summer that there was another member in Hillsborough that was gonna challenge the wording of the UDO. So we held on, the wording got changed. We thought it was good, and it is good. But it doesn't change anything for us because now we have a different requirement to improve a private road. So those are the highlights, and I'm gonna just try and go through this and bring you up to speed. We're gonna hit these topics, but I can't emphasize enough, we're not disagreeing with the UDO, we're not disagreeing with utilities or planning. We wouldn't have the education and information without them and their patience. We just want to share the complexity of how the UDO applies on our property and what that has us doing. So from where we are, the bottom right side of the arrow, property we're talking about is the top left side of the arrow. So it's just down the street from us. Here's the plat. The yellow rectangle is the property, 0.85 acres. The red vertical rectangle, that is the evil private road, gravel road, unimproved road. That's our nemesis right now. Here's how it overlays on satellite imagery. Getting a little bit closer. This is what we're trying to accomplish. 1,000 square foot house and a 500 square foot ADU rather, in a detached garage. The UDO, when we started working with this plan, it was edition 12 December 2022, when we started working with planning. And it had in there the specifics that were a challenge for us was that the lot had to have direct access to a public street, which ours does not. So that forced us to make our plan to have the attached UDO, ADU, sorry, UDO is kind of giving me post-traumatic stress disorder. But we didn't have a public street frontage, so that had to change. There were the cliff notes. That's how we understood the definitions, that we're not talking about an efficiency apartment. We are talking about an ADU, things like that. The same UDO, it's telling us that detached garages were encouraged, wanted them detached. We want the ADU detached as well. The topic came up with water and sewer. Because it's on a private road and it's an old property that existed before the town annexed or started to control that area in 1977, I believe. It's got all kinds of abandoned pipes, bad things, and it needs to be improved. Utilities helped us out, May of 2023, a very good email that we're still using. They gave us a great attachment so that we could visualize where the old pipes and the old lines were and what has to be done. And I just want to check on this. Oh, the bottom yellow box on here, the two big takeaways from all this is that whoever buys the property or wants to build on it is going to have to pay to get water and sewer hookup. And we wanted to do that. And there's a question on system capacity overall. With this diagram that they gave us and the email, working with utilities, working with Tom King over at planning, we got it. Our issues and concerns were addressed by the town. We then turned to the owners at the time and we made the offer and we bought the property because we're willing to do all that. That made sense to us. At this time, nobody was hiding anything from us, but there was no discussion about having to improve a private road because it didn't apply at this time. And I'll explain some of that. So let me build kind of a picture of the neighboring properties. Here's where our blue rectangle, that's our property. And then this is part of McAdams Road. There's a McAdams Road paved and there's McAdams Road private, which is gravel. The bottom, you see 634 and 636. Those are on the paved part. Going up vertically, 642, 644, which is ours, and 646 are on the private road. I'm gonna start talking just to give some comparisons on what these properties are, so you're aware of them. 634 and 636. If I combine them both those houses were built in 2023, finished in 2023-24 timeframe. They're both over 2,000 feet. One of them's 2,081, one's 2,104. They both have 5 bedrooms each, 3 bathrooms each. And so if, from our perspective, just as people that want to build a small 1,000-foot and a 500-foot detached ADU, we've got 0.85 acres. Together, those two pieces of property that are 110 feet away from us, they have 0.53 acres. So we've got a third more of an acre. They're totaling 4,185 square feet on 2 properties. And we have 2,609 less square feet we're asking to build. They built 10 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, and we want to do 7 bedrooms less and 3 bedrooms less. So we understand there's a difference between a gravel road and a private road, but on the sewer water capacity where we're going to have to pay anyways to hook up new to the town's connections, we're not asking to build a big house there. We could build a bigger house. We're not. We want to make a charming little house. So that's that. And both those houses, 634 and 636, are just purely rentals right now. Just north of them, 642, that's our neighbor's house. And that is on the private one. It's not a great picture of the house. The takeaway here, that house was built in 1962. Then there's our lot, which does not currently have a residence on there, but we'll talk about that. Then there's 646, just next to us. That house was built in 1966. And those lines are correct. That house is not meet any setbacks because that's back before the setback requirements were there. So they are very close to our property. Then you have 643 North Churton Street. Different address, but the property is still accessed from the private road. And then you get 645 North Churton Street, which is connected to the gravel, but I don't think there's any access. And I think Tom King will argue that nothing will ever be built there in our lifetimes. But just so you're aware, because those are the 5 lots attached to the private road, and 5 is a key number in there. Moving along, last summer, talking with Tom King, I had questions trying to learn and interpret the ADU size ratios compared to the primary dwelling. And he explained those, and this is his handwriting on it. And he explained the 2 takeaways from this was, one, the big part is the utilities, the water and sewer, which we had already had a good understanding from Brian. And so we were very happy with that. The other part was, this was the first time that we got a heads up. Tom was saying, there's somebody else challenging this private road, public road thing. You might want to hold off and go to a planning board. So that's where I got to meet some of you. You got to hear me a little bit before, a little different context. We went to the 15 August meeting. We went to the 19 August meeting. The UDO was changed eventually. The wording changed with the 28 October edition. And then it went from saying that an ADU had to have public access to the change there in blue, that it could go to a private road, but now the private road has to be improved to meet private road standards. Sitting in here, I didn't know the difference. Wasn't my call on that. Later got in touch with Tom. What does that mean? Does that mean I just got to make it a certain depth of gravel, pack it to a certain weight, certain width, certain tree clearance? Yes. But it also includes ditches and water shedding and things like that. So private road improvement then sends us to a 94-page manual on the private road standards for Hillsborough. We start to get an education, planning department helping us out with this, fire department for Orange County starting to help us out. And one of the things we learned is we've got to have first responder turnarounds. Anything longer than 150 feet triggers the requirement that a first responder has to have these turnarounds. And the turnarounds, you see 5 different options at the top. I'm going to overlay those on our property and show you some of the challenges we have. And these we did try to get to scale. So you can see kind of the ghosted image. That is the hammerhead. And if we put a hammerhead in there per their size description, not only is it going outside the 30-foot unapproved private road that is not my property, but is starting to cut into my property and a neighbor's property. So that one's not going to work. If we do the cul-de-sac, whether that's up past the corner of my property or in the middle of my front yard, it goes wider than the capacity of the road. And we understand the intent behind all this. If I just bought 20 acres and said, I want to build my own private road and it's going to be longer than 150 feet, I should have to comply with these things so that first responders can get in there so that these things can happen. But I'm going into a neighborhood that was built over 60 years ago, and I'm having trouble getting these things to fit. If I do the Y intersection one, you can see the same challenges with it going into other neighbors' yards, and I can't make it fit. This one, you'll see my ghost image is flipped, and that's to try to get the driveway entrance to go into my property. That is the acceptable alternate hammerhead. It now makes a driveway extremely wide, and 28-foot radius is on the side, and going in a certain distance, pushing my houses back, my house and my ADU back. There's some challenges, but here's the real kicker with me is as we ask the questions and we learn, why does it trigger this in the UDO? Why does it have these requirements? Because if I built a bigger house like the two houses that are 110 feet away from me, it doesn't trigger it. What triggers it is the ADU has the potential, if I understand it correctly, for the rental. And a rental can bring in other challenges that mean more demand for first responders. I can kind of hear that, I kind of get it. My neighbor, 646, which is farther up the private road than me, he is an Airbnb. That's all that house is. The two new houses that are 110 feet away from me are both full rental, all 10 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. So I understand the intent, but then I sit there and Melissa and I go, why is this crashing on us? Here's the survey. Survey shows our property. I'll build it in a little closer. The gray box at the top of the property, that's the neighbor's house. That's how close they are. And I know that we're not asking them to change setbacks or anything like that. I'm just showing that the things that apply for us with a new build don't apply to everything that surrounds us on all 4 sides. This is the neighbor's house. And the circles are our property line, coming from the fence at the top of the picture, right through the middle of their HVAC. Our property line cuts through their HVAC. It is what it is. Trees. Here's where we start to get into a bigger question or our plea to you. As you look at the survey, the trees at the bottom left half of this, those big trees that are lining the road are gonna have to come out. They're gonna have to come out because the buildup of the private road has to be able to go to a ditch. And that ditch is gonna be where those trees are. So let me show you this. From the paved part of McAdams, looking up the private road, these are the trees. And my mouse icon, if we look at the top right picture, this slopes down into the neighbor's yard. It does naturally, it has for the last 60 years. This sheds down the water down to the left. This is a small ditch right here. It has for the last 60 years. But the challenge is, if I'm looking down from our property, down towards McAdams, you can see the same thing, you can see the slope. And then here's the property line. All these trees in the right picture, all those trees have to go. In the left picture, you see the square. That is to scale. That is the requirements for the clearance for the first responder vehicles. There are no turns on this road. If a first responder has to come up 110 feet to get to our house, they could potentially drive straight back without anything else. If it was a 140-foot road, there would be no requirement for this. But because the road itself past our property is 150 feet, it triggers some of these things. The other concerning part are the size of the trees that are coming out. The large pines, there's one in particular on the right side of the road as you look downhill. It has an 80-inch circumference, 25-inch diameter, and if I go online for just a conservative trying to figure it out, it estimates that's a 76-year-old pine. The hardwood, which is on our property, that would also have to go, has a 117-inch circumference, 3 feet diameter, and it's estimated to be 88 years old at the short side. This is just kind of an oh, by the way picture, because the town is not in a position to do things money-wise to help us improve that. But when they just paved McAdams Street at the beginning of this month, the subcontractors did their clean out on our road, on the private road. So it was wasn't intentional, but it's kind of one of those, that's a little interesting. We've been told that we need to get with the neighbors and we need to rename the road. I find that challenging because I've got a neighbor whose HVAC is on my property and I have to go tell them that, hey, that Airbnb that you have, that business, the house that's been built over 60 years ago, or his house was 59 years ago, I gotta ask you to rename the road. That's not gonna go over well for us introducing ourselves to the new neighbors, and they already have a postal. The other question is whether the first responders can get to us. On the 15th of this month, I spoke with the EMS supervisor. I went over, talked to him. I said, just curiosity, can you put my address in? McAdams Street. He goes, it's right over there. I said, can you just put it in your system? He put it in, he pulled up mine, 644. He pulled up 642 and 646. It's already established in the system. The other thing with improving the private road that we just learned about last week from our engineer is that where the gravel road intersects with the paved road, then has to have a larger turn radius. It can't just be two lines coming together like it currently is. So you'll see the arrow shows that I have to have a 15-foot radius, which means I've got to add 15 feet of cover or four-foot sections of cover. So what that'll look like, if you get rid of where the recycling and garbage bin in, move the mailbox, extend another 15 feet out, 16 feet with four-foot sections. And then I've got to make a bigger curve, a radius, and that's an approximate area for it. Now you can see between the curve and the mailbox, there's already the ditch. The water's already been going down there. There's a part where we go, if this is a safety concern for fire, for rental, why is it not already being imposed on the neighbors? And I'm not trying to get them in trouble, but why does all the improvement cost come to us? Because we're gonna be tearing out large trees that have been there. We'll be disrupting neighbors' yards. We're gonna be changing a lot of things that have not been mandated thus far. The other thing that we want to bring to your attention, we're not changing the use of our property at all. So this might be a moot point. It might not. I don't know when the mobile home was there, but there was a residence there as early as 2008. It was about 825 square feet. It's there in 2010, 2013, 2017, 2019, it was still there. I don't know when it left. But we're not proposing any change for the property. It was a residence, it's bought to be a residence, and we plan to make it a residence. I'm in the last 3 slides, I promise. The top of this page just has kind of the overview timelines. So there you can see 63 years ago, one neighbor's house was built. 59 years ago, the other side of us was built. 77, the town annexed that area. That was 48 years ago. There was a residence on there at least 17 years ago. Then it talks about us contacting the town and what we've done the last 2 years. Here's my takeaway. Here's where I will get down after this one. There's this and then the thank you slide. But our 3 points. Had we known all these requirements, and this wasn't anybody hiding anything, this is the evolution of how the wording has changed with the UDO and how the application has changed. Had we known this, we would not have bought this property. We would have bought something else. We want to be here. We're gonna stay here. We love this place. But this isn't what we were looking for. And that's not anybody's fault. That's just the way it went. There is a requirement that if there are 4 or more lots or structures, then it triggers the requirement for things. There have been 5 lots associated with that road, that private road, since well before any of this has gone on. So us building a house or a house and an ADU, unless we're misunderstanding it, doesn't change those requirements. But today, if we decided to drop the 500 foot off of our 1,000 foot and just make a 2,000 foot house and put in 7 bedrooms or 6 bedrooms and 3 baths, there wouldn't be an issue. I wouldn't have to do anything with that road. I wouldn't have to cut out trees and redo ditches and change addresses and ask the first responders if they can turn around. That part's just hard to digest, but we understand the intent if we were buying new property and creating a brand new private road. But we're surrounded by everything that was grandfathered and we're not. So that covers A, B, and C. Our requests, and you know, we don't know what the next step is, but our request is we plan on paying for every penny of the water and the sewer and the trenching and building up the gravel and the weight requirements and the width requirements and the tree clearance for the branches. But we don't want to cut down 70-year-old trees to put a ditch in where there's already a ditch. And we don't want to make a big, huge culvert at the end and add a whole bunch of turn where it already intersects and it has for the last 60 years. That's one thing. 2, kind of a smaller thing, we don't want to have to go to the neighbors and rename the road. It's been there they use it, Coastal uses it, first responders have no problem finding it. And three, if we're tearing all this up and we're paying for all the new water hookups, everything's there, we would just like to do a separate meter for the ADU. Duke's gonna do a separate meter for the power. We would just want it separate for that as well, for the water utilities. All right, thank you for all your time. I can't emphasize enough, this is nothing against utilities and planning. They have been so helpful and very educational, holding our hand and being very patient with us. Molly and Brian and Tom King. But we thank you for your time with that. Any questions?
I just want to say one thing too.
Come up to the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Our intention for this ADU and this house is for us to live in. And we have a 19-year-old kid in college that's gonna live in the ADU. We also have aging parents. So our intention is to live here and be a part of Hillsborough. So it's just difficult to try to build something when we're being told, try not to disturb the ground, you know, with.
Certain amount of ground that we can't disturb per the size of the acreage, yet we're gonna rip up both sides of that 150-foot road.
Yeah, so it just makes it a little bit difficult to try to move forward with it. So that's all I just wanted to say is that what our intention is. Our intention is not to be, we are not investors. We're not like mass builders or anything. It's just for personal use.
Thank you. On behalf of the board, we appreciate your attention to detail, the difficulty that you have experienced. You kind of like won the lottery of difficulty in this. And just for your, if this gives you any comfort at all, Hillsborough is an old town that's grown haphazardly for, centuries, and unusual circumstances like this are not completely uncommon, but this does seem to be the prize winner of difficulties. So thank you for that. I think what I'd like to do is go around the table, let us ask some clarifying questions. And then I'm sure we're gonna have questions for staff as well. And if I can start with a question about why renaming the road? Why is that required?
It actually isn't renaming. That road has no name. It just has been addressed off of McAdams because there was no other option, because that road was never built. And so that requirement actually came from Orange County's E911 Land Records Department, because you can't have two different roads named the same thing. So the onus would actually not be on the neighbors, and I'm sorry if we're under that impression, to readdress that. We would do that. They could be mad at us. We just weren't sure if you wanted to come together to maybe kind of think about what you wanted to name the road. We thought maybe it could be a community building thing, but obviously it doesn't have to be. But yeah, it would be naming the road in general so that it's not continued to be called McAdams when it actually veers up to the right.
Shriner Lane has a nice.
Softly long.
So in terms of other clarifying questions, Megan, do you have any clarifications?
Not any questions at all.
Rob?
Thank you for your presentation.
Not for the applicants. I have a couple of things first. We're doing staff ones.
We'll do staff next. Yeah, let's
Okay.
maybe they might want to sit down. Brian's been up there for a while. I'll come back around, but Kathleen, do you have any?
I have a lot of questions for staff. I mean, this is. I first of all, I really appreciate that you guys want to live there. My feelings about absentee landowners and neighborhoods and having lived in a neighborhood where we had that problem, it's not kind. So I am grateful that you guys want to live there, but this. It's, like I said, I have a lot of questions for staff, only because I know that probability statistics in terms of what actually does happen with people, and number of people, and you really did win the gnarly award. Oh my gosh. But I don't have any questions for you guys, but I appreciate your kindness and generosity working with staff. kudos to you. I would personally probably be pulling out my hair. And again, appreciate that you do want to do it.
Thank you. No questions. I thank you for coming and bringing this to our attention. Solely because of the fact when we amended the ordinance back on October 28th. I was a no vote because I foresaw unintended consequences with how we were amending it and with the particular language, and I hope that we can move forward with some sort of UPO text amendment that will undo some of those unintended consequences.
I totally agree, cause can I add? In that meeting, I was hoping you were in the audience, I was on the phone, and I was like, where is that property owner? And it was you.
I didn't know what I didn't know at the time.
But, sorry, yeah.
Evelyn, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Basically commend you for what you've been through, and as far as I would be concerned, you could do it.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't like to cut down trees, and I think the fire department, the EMS, and of course, you never know. But I can't see, I'm on the road, I represent the town on the road 5 board, and this is not happening in hadn't come before us. But I know that they have certain rules about, I can remember one development, there was no place to turn around. And they ended up that, I think they had to cut a road, but that was a new development. This seems ridiculous. I mean, for you to have to go through this, and you've done a really good job. I can't see anybody coming before us and being as calm as you have and have done all the research that you've done. You're one in a million.
Thank you. And if we put something up that's incorrect, it's not intentional, but that's our understanding of the situation we're in.
Great, thank you. So I guess hang tight and maybe Shannon, we can pepper you with questions and ask for
Thank you.
suggestions. Thank you. And can I say that was a lot of detailed information in a very short period of time. Unfortunately, I think we're mostly familiar with all the intricacies there. And then we will lean on staff to help us come up with some kind of path forward. So, Megan, can we start with you? Do you have any questions for staff on what you've heard and other questions you might have?
No, I think, I don't have any questions really. We covered everything in October, and I know that I was not able to vote at that meeting because I was absent, but I would still vote no against what the amendment was. So I think everything was covered. I'm trying to say is I don't have any further questions. That would move to perhaps change something. Sorry, cookies got me.
No, and I was gonna say, the applicant made a great presentation. There wasn't anything wildly false or anything in there. And I will just say that, the regulations don't look at circumstances. So they kind of are what they are. And so, these requirements are in place. If you do a 4-lot subdivision and you have to build the private street, they're in place. If you want to build a new house in an ADU on an unimproved street, it doesn't look at what size that house is going to be. It doesn't look at how many bedrooms. It's, the requirements kind of are what they are. It's not like, well, if you're going to live in it, then this is fine, but if you're gonna rent it out, then it's this way. I mean, it's just not as nuanced as that. The regulations tend to kind of be kind of what they are, so. And we have others, this is not, it seems like a unique situation, but it's really not. We've got lots of platted lots at the end of unimproved roads. We've got a couple of them just here at the end of Corbin Street. So if you get done with the meeting site, you wanna drive down there, the pavement drops,
it goes to gravel, then it goes down to like a footpath, and there are two lots down there at the end of that one too that are gonna have a very similar struggle. We've got what I call the Kings over on, not related to Tom King. There's King George and God, Molly, what's that other one?
King Charles.
Kidding, everybody, King Edward, King Charles, yeah. So those are have a lot of the paper streets where the street partially got built, then it goes to gravel, then it goes more to dirt, and there's lots of lots on those, and I'm sure I can think of a handful of other situations, so it's just lots that are there that exist that are, you could build on them, but there's no way to really access them for EMS and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think,
Here, I don't have any.
and I think when we talked about it last year, I think y'all identified there were like 12 streets where this would, be.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we made a map.
Mhm.
Thank you for reminding me about that. I was like, this happens in various places.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, it is a challenge, for one or two homeowners to have to do street improvement to be able to get egress.
Brown.
So my first question is if they would have, submitted their application before October, before we make that UDO change, how would that affect what they're looking to do now?
I mean, we could talk in what ifs, but they didn't. So if they would have done that, they could have built whatever the UDO said at that time. Kind of goes back to grandfathering and why there are houses from the 40s and 50s and 60s built, on unimproved right of ways. I believe at that time they were talking about wanting to do the detached ADU, but you were not allowed to do detached ADUs on private streets at all. So they could have submitted a building permit application for like a house with a finished basement apartment or attached like mother-in-law. I think we even tried to loophole a little bit with a breezeway, yeah. So building code considers it attached if you maintain a roof line within a certain distance. Because we had that conversation with another applicant too, where it was like, it's not my favorite, it's a loophole, but the building code does say it's attached if it has a roof, so.
And during this whole process, were we communicating with them that they were looking to do this UDO rewrite and change, some of the language?
Yeah, that's why they were at the public hearing. I think Tom King reached out and said.
We were at the two public hearings. But,
August, September.
I didn't know, yes, sir, but I didn't know what the end result meant. Approve the private road, makes sense to me, cause I'm gonna trench it for the new water and new sewer. We'll make it better. Didn't realize that it was gonna have these requirements for ditches, which then when we got our engineer, he started measuring, those trees gotta go, those trees gotta go. Then the Orange County Fire got involved with, you're gonna have to have these turnarounds, like, that goes off of our property, so. Ignorance on our part, we heard, but we didn't understand what all went into that, and we weren't the actual applicants for any of those. We were.
Another impacted property.
Yeah, we were just kind of piggybacking on somebody who was challenging the UDO, we're like, oh, sounds like this would be good. We try it.
Thank you. And then remind me, Shannon, before or rewrite, I think you actually said it, so. An attached ADU on a private road. For change would still require improvements to that private road?
Yes, I believe the ordinance at the time said that.
No, it's prior to the change, you could not have a detached on a private road. It had to have access to a public road.
But you could have the attached.
You could have it.
But you didn't have to.
The road.
You could have an attached ADU without improving the private road.
Correct.
I can chime in this history if that helps. So in 2021, there was another property owner on Burnside who applied. And she requested to amend the ordinance to allow attached ADUs. So she had one on Burnside, it's private street. And the ordinance was amended after much discussion to allow that. The portion regarding detached was never touched. So private road, improvements were not necessarily required, attached versus detached. As we were talking about opening this up, and with concerns we've had about private roads in the past, that's when that got introduced, especially in talking with utilities. et cetera. But to answer your question, before attached was allowed, not detached, private road improvements were not required at that time.
Yeah, the conversation, I think, with detached was basically you're adding more units. So bringing the private street up to more of a standard. There's some cost benefit there.
And then the issue with separate meters, are we asking them to put it all on one meter? I thought you could have a separate meter for maybe.
So what we described to them, so we have an existing meter, just for a little bit of history, the trailer that was served on this property wasn't actually served off of McAdams. It went across two other neighbors' properties and down all the way to Churton Street. So town staff went out and used a tracer wire and ran a tracer wire and put electric current on it and followed it all the way until we ran out of wire. And so we basically moved the tap over to McAdams and made a new tap. And we made a 1-inch tap with a 1-inch meter. So it's our new standard, which means they could do, and I'm sorry, I'm using jargon here, but that we could do something called a cow horn, which is a single tap where you go into two separate meters. The problem is off of that, the biggest the line could be coming from there is 1 inch. So that's not much bigger than a garden hose. So you're talking 150 feet of two 1-inch lines going up to these two structures. You know, we would worry about pressure complaints, you know, or pressure issues from tenants in the accessory dwelling unit. So the good news about engineering is problems are solvable with money. I mean, you could look at amending your building permit to have a domestic pump. Well, that would require a backflow. So if we have a domestic pump and a backflow, you know, that would have obviously an escalation on cost, but it would help with pressure issues. That said, it's better than one 1-inch line with two structures on it. So it's something that we moved the line, we made a new tap for them, but it's not ideal, but we've got a lot of places in Hillsborough where we're doing infill development in areas that aren't ideal. So, you know, you know, that would be our recommendation, is to look for a way to maybe try to boost the pressure a little bit, just given the length of the service to the residents, and maybe just do one backflow. That's why we were nudging them toward one tap. We're not saying you definitively can't do it. We're just saying you may be better off with only one backflow and one domestic pump.
Would we be able to pay for a second tap at the street end?
You could, yeah, but the issue there is if you have two taps, every line's gonna have to have some backflow on it. And the backflows are expensive, you're looking about $700 per backflow. That's why I was kind of nudging you away from that. Yeah, $7,500 per backflow, and you have to tap them every 3 years. So, well, that's why I was kind of nudging away from that, just because it's twice as expensive, it's twice as many backflows. So, that's, we're not saying it's a definitive hard requirement. It was just, that was more of a recommendation to try to keep costs a little bit more manageable. Yeah.
That's all the questions. Thank you.
So I think I probably have fragments of about 20 or 30 questions. I'm going to try and distill that down into something a little bit more manageable. In what are the minimum changes to the UDO that would provide the most relief or assistance to the property owners to do what they want to do with the property? I mean, there are multiple components to this equation, some of which are clearly outside of our hands. It's not the town's responsibility. It's gonna be a county thing or an EMS thing. So what can the town do to provide flexibility? And I understand that 50 years from now, there's probably going to be a proper street in there. This is maybe a temporary kind of fix to the problem. And I hope the applicant understands that when we have these kinds of improvement issues, that certain things need to get brought up to speed, or else they'll never get brought up to speed or to modern standards. And then our ancestors will be facing this exact same question, and somebody's going to have to pay to fix these things, either the town, property owners, and things like that. So I guess that's one thing I would like to kind of understand. What are the easiest things to do to get the most benefit to the property owners without undoing our ability to get things up to standard in the future?
to some extent, you answered your own question. So, yeah, well, you talked yourself through it. So, I mean, we could say that, you know, ADUs require no road improvements at all. We would want to think through whether or not that's the best option. You know, this property isn't very far from the paved right of way of McAdams. The one at the end of McAdams is pretty far. So we kind of have to think about the public health and safety concerns and what were to happen if that structure at the end caught fire or somebody had an emergency and, you know, the fire truck gets halfway down that gravel road and is like, I don't know, and then they have to get out and they're losing time on assessing that emergency because there's no improvement. We also have to, you know, think about, if just running through like there's the scale it back to make no improvements to public streets to put in ADUs and add units. Then we have to think about how does that impact, new subdivisions that want to do public street or private streets. Right now, we allow up to 4 units, 4 lots, with private street construction to this standard. Do we want to keep allowing that? I mean, these are conversations we're gonna have with the UDO rewrite. You know, it may be that we get rid of private streets altogether and, you know, that I would say like the nuclear, you know, town solve the option is, do we start putting CIP money aside to pave streets like this? Do we go through these paper streets and what does that cost analysis look like? And I'm sure Matt's like, what are you doing? Why are you paving streets with town money that's not allocated? But you know, that is something that we have discussed, you know, and even with the, you know, that, like I said, we have areas kind of all over town where the pavement stops, it drops, it goes to gravel, and then it goes to dirt. So there are a lot of different ways we could come at that. You know, there's not necessarily an immediate solve for this right now. We could do some type of a UDO text amendment that maybe does a modified private street for existing. We'd have to look at what other jurisdictions do. I don't have like a great immediate solve. It's kind of like,
I have a.
You need the public
immediate
street.
solve. We want to try it, but it's one option is, an inverted crown. We could allow an inverted crown up to 150 feet. And then they'd have to put a yard in, like, you know, at 150 feet with constraints, that would not be UDO rewrite, that would be an amendment to the street
Street
standards,
standard.
which is something the commission could do tonight if they wanted.
And for a crown, wouldn't that cause some other issues?
Yeah, that's why it's not in the constraint statement. It's not one of our.
not one of our
Well,
standards.
this goes back to another lifetime when I was up to ears in ASHTO standards, and I'm hearing this and I'm like going, whoa.
Yeah, they're not great, they're not very good at being streets, but
Yeah.
they work very well in narrow rights of way because the flow line's in the middle and then you can put a yard in on top of the culvert that's already there. So like there are options that are out there, but you can define a lot of those options by their limitations. You know, they don't do a very good job of channelizing flow. You're gonna have washout of gravel that's being concentrated on top of gravel now. It's not they're less optimal solutions, but it's a difficult situation we're in right now, so. I mean,
And it'd be a temporary sort of thing in the long run anyways, right?
no, that would probably be for forever here, because I don't know unless somebody came through with a public street later, that's what the road would be here, is an inverted crown private street.
Bob's engineered a solution.
What about a variance?
That was gonna be my other question.
I mean, it's asking for a variance from the requirements of the UDO. I mean, I haven't thought it all the way through.
Sure, but is this unique to this property when we have so many other properties in town, and are we gonna ask all those other properties to come get a variance?
That's the question, I suppose.
I shy away from variances if it's not very, very unique to the singular property, because then we'd basically be encouraging anybody to get a variance, but that would be an option, maybe.
Faulkner might be able to make out a case for, this happening unique situation. Given what's above it, what's below it, the width of the street, the fire department requiring. The turnarounds, and you have the development of the cul-de-sac right across the street. I mean, there are ways that you might be able to.
Yeah, and I could see staff supporting it if they were still going to improve the private street in some way. I think it would be hard for us to just be like, yeah, sure, build whatever you want at the end of the gravel road.
Does the cost of improving the private street fall on just this, owner?
Yeah, because if they are the one wanting to do the construction. Now, if 2 years later, the property next door gets purchased and torn down and they want to build something else, they would have to build that next segment. Or, tomorrow, if the property at the end of the street wants to build something, they would have to be required to build that the whole way to their frontage, is kind of how it works, is everyone builds to their frontage. But at present, yes, I mean, the property between them and the paved portion of McAdams is an existing structure that I don't think has any plans to do any major renovations or tear down or anything like that.
So this circumstance is it's a landlocked parcel on a paper street. That's the.
It's the rough.
Just, wow, okay. I will turn it over to Kathleen for.
Yeah, and that is the rub. It is a landlocked on a paper street. Problematic, and you actually pointed out a couple things that, I actually, a family member had a similar situation, but the opposite side would be, like the neighbor that who owned the thing, their insurance company got involved and, the long and short of it, after all the lawsuits, that property line extended beyond the air conditioning several feet because the insurance companies protect their properties. They don't like it when there's some things I'm like, on my head screaming. Like I said, gnarly. I want to get into some questions because, with this already, how, with those trees, there's gonna be fiber coming in. They require right of way. They're going in those, how are you gonna get fiber in? Or is that, is that just bypassed?
They would have to do a right of entry, because it's not a public street, so it's outside the terms of our encroachment agreement that we
Okay.
issued to fiber company, so they would have to talk directly to the property owner. But in this case, it's an unclaimed strip of land, so they may never come up there just because they just don't know who they could get permission from.
Right,
Yeah.
and it is problematic, but it's things, and I'm thinking of over time. Because we do, and this is one of the things that really do bother me about private streets, we do have this issue and it's not fair to property owners across, just across the board, you've got landlocked, the property owners are required, you have to have, some sort of access, but this private street. And at some point, when you have a private street, invariably, there's gonna be demands at some point to be public streets. It may not be in our lifetime, but we are a 250-year-old town. I'm on the first responders. The more people regardless that are on the road, the odds go up. How are those trucks, how are they actually gonna get down and back? Whether it is, whether it is, fire or ambulance, speed is of essence. How are they, with those trees are narrow, because the other thing is you don't want to have, to hit a tree. We don't want to lose our equipment due to tree damage. That wipes out safety at a community level. So what is the true risk of us being able to service fire EMS? And you have to consider that last house fast, safely, and safe for both sides of the equation.
I agree, which is why staff thinks it's a good idea to bring private streets up to a standard so that those are passable. So staff would not necessarily recommend backing off the private street standards, but it's the will of this board. But yes, that would be a staff concern about being able to get ambulances, fire apparatus, stuff down there and not having them stop and try and figure out what the conditions are.
I am a little concerned in terms of precedents. Because we do have, I was thinking it was 10, not 12, that my memory failed me, some of the others. Because more, I don't like setting up situations where it's a matter of when, not if, there's gonna be some sort of fire EMS emergency. You know, in terms of the improvements, help me understand, you came from Durham, so help me understand, because I know there are neighborhoods where the entire street has to split costs. What's the scenario where it's the street, the people on that street splitting the cost versus the burden falling on one property owner?
They have an ordinance where they can do an assessment, now they did that when, we had what were called failed developments. So the developer got halfway through, sold lots and then just pulled stakes and left. And so Durham spent 7 years fighting with the bonding company to get them to pay. And at the end, the bonding company would only pay for the final inch of asphalt on a road that has since crumbled to nothing. So that's when the city council came in and did an assessment and made people pay per foot for failed subdivisions, which is a public meeting you do not want to ever have to attend from experience. The others, there are dirt roads, but Durham actually just elected to go in and pave all the remaining dirt roads in Durham.
Well, there's that, because off the chalk level, there was a road that was not paved, but when it was paved,
They did an assessment, yeah.
they did the assessment for every one of those
Mhm.
property owners.
Yeah, and they're kind of getting away from that model now, from what I understand from talking to folks there, just because it's, a lot of people living on these dirt roads, these are not high value homes, right? So you're talking about $15,000, $20,000 assessment on a $150,000 home. That's just not realistic. And so they put it as part of the most recent bond issue, I think, to actually just pay them. And just go ahead and take them into the street network. But, on ones where it was a failed subdivision, that's when they did a forced assessment, so.
Because that was something, at least, if we were not to, and if we were to pay, I mean, we would have, again, we just have to think of, it's a 200-year-old town.
Mhm.
You put in infrastructure knowing it's failing wire or it's reducing some temporary is never temporary. And it ends up being, you just increase the cost even more so than what it would have been had we done it right the first time. And that's one of the things in terms of take care of what we've got, do it right the first time.
Right, and yeah, this right of way would be too narrow to be a public street too, so unfortunately, we did consider that as an option.
Okay.
Can you repeat that again? And
This right of way is too narrow to meet any of our public street standards.
Okay.
We couldn't make it work for any of because if we do a public street, now we have to allow fiber, we have to allow. Because they have certificates of public convenience, it's something that the state issues, we have to allow them. So when we take over a street, we have to have a certain width, otherwise we can't meet our obligations.
So you don't ever anticipate this
Yeah.
road becoming a public
No,
street?
this would never be a public street, not unless the neighbors chose to petition for acceptance. First thing that we're gonna tell them they have to do is dedicate right of way to make it wide enough to be a public street.
Yeah, I think you had another question.
There was one other, just give me a moment, I've got to find my key. To address the water meters, and that was really my other one. It'll come to me later, but those were the major ones.
Thank you. Matt?
No further questions.
Have one?
a lot of questions, but I really don't, I just wish they had applied before. But did they had no idea that the orders was gonna change from one thing to the other? But they applied after were they aware that the town was working on a new ordinance?
Yes, the text amendment, they were, I think originally the reason they didn't apply before, they were not interested, they wanted a detached ADU and not attached.
They wanted to,
They wanted a detached accessory dwelling unit, which,
House.
yeah, they could have done an attached one, but that's not what they were wanting to do. And so they were part of the text amendment process. They spoke of that, but he mentioned before that they heard about the private road improvements, but they just didn't understand exactly what that meant at that time.
and there's no way they could change the way that the houses are set or nothing to do with that. It was basically the trees, the road, the getting to it.
Yeah, I think a lot of their concerns and their requests on their last page were not really so much regarding the orientation or the size or anything of the houses or the ADUs. It was more having to do that private road.
Well, I know that and it really, I think when he said this, the fire chief said there was not a road that he couldn't get to, but I think that was the one that the subdivision that's next to the cemetery, town cemetery, one, the, McKees on it, the McKees, part of McKees. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Well, there was something about, he said that, that was, he said that that he could get to he didn't care whether there was end of whether he had to go and turn into a driveway that, and to get out, he would get out some way if he had to go across somebody's yard. And so that was the only time in the board that I can remember that came up when I asked about that. What were you gonna do if you get to the end, you can't turn around? And he said, it's not anybody's yard, I won't go across. So do you want a fire truck going across your yard? And you want an EMS going across your yard? It just depends. I mean, there may never be any needs for either one, but you don't know. And, I think the first responder truck that normally goes first could easily do that, but I don't know, but if you took the smallest fire truck, I don't know that you could get through, and I hate to see those trees go. I mean, I just hate that they've come this far and, I don't know. I didn't like private roads to start with. And I sort of agree I agree with him, but I would probably vote for it because of the fact that somebody convinced me that the fire department had no problems with it, but that road it was probably wider. You know the road I'm talking about?
yeah.
Was that road wider? Do you remember?
The subdivision over by the McKees, I believe is a public street. They ended up making it a public street.
And so you see, no, they can't, there's nothing they can do with the houses that would make a difference except, even if they combine the two houses and lived in one house, it still couldn't do it.
No, not currently. With the private street would need to be
It'd be private,
constructed.
but you had the same problem, so there's no way you can move stuff around.
I mean, Bob's suggestion for a variance isn't
What did you say? Bob?
terrible.
My comment a few minutes ago about possibility,
Speak louder, so I can,
the comment I made a few minutes ago
thank you.
about the possibility of seeking a variance
Yeah, various.
from these kind of limiting provisions of UDM.
That Board of Adjustment, Bob.
That would be
Yes.
Board of Adjustment, yeah.
Shannon, just to clarify on that, can you distill for the board what areas are under our purview and what are still county and fire department issues that things work out?
So yeah, I think request number one, with regard to getting rid of the ditches and,
So private tree standards would be
private street standards would be like item one.
public safety turnaround. the-
Public safety turnaround, we would probably have to get with Orange County EMS to figure out the fire marshal's office to figure out what they would accept for a turnaround. And then naming the street, I think that E911 is probably gonna hold on to that. Just for safety reasons, and we can deal with it with the post office. We have this happen from time to time. And then 4 was requesting separate water meters. It sounds like there is an option to do that, but it may be costly. So that would be part of the variance. I think largely the variance would be a request to modify those private street standards.
Is it the inclusion of the ADU that trips this over to?
Yes.
So if there were no ADU, they could,
Yeah, we legally could not prevent them from building a house on a buildable lot, even though the egress is not great. We just, you know that.
I have a question about you mentioning the private street, oh, sorry. I thought-
Go ahead.
The private street standards versus the EMS, and I thought the EMS, information was within the private street, so if we say they have to handle or be up to the private street standard, that's what triggers EMS. I didn't think it came from Orange County that was in our.
We would want to get concurrence from Orange County that they agree with that, because we don't want to say, yeah, sure,
But by us
this
putting,
works, and give a variance, and then EMS goes to turn down there and says, no, we're not going down there.
but
So
by us putting in that you have to build it up to the standard, that's when it all of a sudden has to have the turnaround on it. Not that on our ordinance, or was, it's our street standards that is doing that, not
Yes,
so
but
much.
we don't make those up on our own. We
Oh,
work with
yeah,
EMS to.
But Orange County's not
establish those.
also in this game telling you we need a turnaround. They're looking at a turnaround because our ordinance says we need the turnaround to make it a public street standard.
Private.
Or private streets.
Those turnaround diagrams, those are from the state fire code.
Yeah,
So
no,
those
I-
are, that's like, because we're doing what we're doing, it triggers the state fire code, which is the state fire marshal, or the the Orange County Fire Marshal's office.
I just
That's
wanna-
no discretion.
Yeah, I just wanna make that clear that it's not, that everybody knows that it's our street standards that we put in the ordinance that is making that happen. Not that Orange County is over here saying, no, you gotta do this also.
Well, and yeah, a variance may, we may be able to do a variance to get rid of the ditches and not cut down as many trees, but we may not be able to get away from the requirement to do the turnaround or some type of turnaround that would be acceptable with EMS. We would have to coordinate on that.
So EMS though, and it's not come in and like if it was just a house, right, they're not coming in and saying, we want this turnaround or.
They may comment, I'm not sure if you've seen this on the building permit, but when they may comment that like. We have concerns about the egress, but legally we couldn't turn down a building permit for a single family detached house, for that reason. Maybe EMS has more ability than planning has.
Yeah, that's, and I can't remember exactly, but my understanding is that, with some of these existing private streets, just like us, and planning, there are limitations on what they can require. So again, like Shannon's saying, there would be recommendations, indications that, our fire apparatus can't get down the street, but they might not be able to compel them to bring it up to current standards. So that's where that, and that's the same thing that comes in with us, like we can't prevent somebody from building another primary dwelling on an existing lot, that's already there. It's, it's a reported lot. But what we could do is put parameters around further increasing that density by adding accessory dwelling units to all those lots, and that's where that portion of the text amendment came from. That was the intent, because we don't just think about 644 McAdams. If we take away that requirement about having to come up to meet private road standards, every lot down there could have a primary dwelling and an ADU without any improvements to the street. So it is a complicated issue.
Kathleen?
Yeah, I had a couple things, but you raised something because you're saying that fire EMS can make recommendations, they can't compel. But if they can't go down, what happens to insurance rates?
I mean, that's between them and their insurer. I imagine when their insurance agent comes out to, and I'm just guessing, but I'm imagining that when they come out to see the property, that may be a question that they have about, direct, able to serve or able to access, the same way that they would go out and look for the closest fire hydrant and measure the closest, fire station and rate, and you would get rated accordingly.
But
You may be in a higher risk category.
you raised something though that before is that the turnarounds. When does fire EMS require the turnouts? Because I find it disturbing that you can have population in town limits that potentially cannot be accessed by fire EMS. Right, it's one thing when you live in the country, that's part of living out in the country. But in town limits, to deliberately have a setup where they can't get fire EMS. I would want, I'm like, oh my God, heart attack. So when does fire EMS, when can they compel? That's really what I'm trying to get at.
I'm not entirely sure, not working for fire and EMS, but they do evaluate during new construction proposals when something comes in for building permit. So if you were to do a major addition, if you're gonna do new construction of an ADU or primary residence, then I believe that they look at it. Now, with existing homes, a home that's been at the end of a dead end gravel road since the 40s, I don't think they're driving around looking to see that those conditions exist. But
Right.
definitely that's something that's caught with new construction.
Right.
But I can definitely reach out to Chief Cabe and Kirby Saunders with EMS and ask them if they're doing any active evaluations of those types of situations in town.
Because I mean, whether the dwelling or the building may be built in the 40s, but again, 100 years from now, they deserve whoever comes in, the original owners are dead. So the new ones deserve
Let me
to.
ask a question, following you, we're not following today.
Yeah.
If you go past the house, is there anything else past? There's another house past that on the same private,
Yes, there's another house and then there is another vacant lot that could potentially be built on.
and you're going down, you come in you come in McAdams Road and turn, and then there's their house, that would be their house.
There's a house right there where the road does a Y, so there's a house here, their lot, a house, and then another vacant lot at the end.
But what about the first?
They've got this weird kind of semi frontage on McAdams, the paved portion as well as the unpaved portion. I think the driveway comes off the paved portion, but they're right there like on the corner.
And so there's not enough land that past the house that you could somebody could turn around, because usually the first responder goes first, then the fire truck, and then EMS.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just a gravel path.
And the other houses are these, I mean, they're using that gravel pad.
The house after this one is using the gravel
I
path.
have a fire department meeting on the 17th, 15th to 17th. I'll ask that same question, maybe too late, but I'll ask that question.
Yeah, again, if they're not making any improvemments, we could compel them to do anything.
No, I just
about
wanna
it.
ask, I'll ask. That would be then a good maybe, but it'll make me feel good, cause I know. If they were the only house on that road, on that private road, that would be one thing. You follow me?
Mhm.
Because you can turn around anywhere. It's just. It's a shame.
Thank you, everyone.
It's got one more.
Okay,
one more,
Kathleen,
which
one
is,
more.
and it has to
Change
do,
the question.
and it has to do with really with our UDO when you're dealing with landlocked private streets. I know you mentioned there's, there's, two on this particular. I mean, how many of those situations do we have in town? Because how many people are at risk of situations? Like the shiners, because I mean, do we have any kind of zoning? Or have we considered any kind of zoning? Something, because I mean, I understand if you wanna build on a lot, build on a lot, however. Some of the issues we're raising with the greater population, the ADUs and exposure. Do we have any kind of zoning or, how many, I'm just trying to get a feel of scale town that situations like this.
So, we weren't, currently, we were allowing private streets only for 4 lots or 4 units. We expanded that to also allow ADUs on private streets if the private street was brought up to standard. We definitely flag it for folks when they call us when they're looking for lots and kind of, this top of mind at the end of Corbin Street because someone had purchased that property and then started asking questions after they purchased.
Yeah, I know exactly about that situation. I got calls.
Yeah, so, that is, we try when people call before they buy to let them know like, hey, have you looked at it? Cause sometimes people, it's not happening right now, but there was a time when the market was so hot that people were buying lots sight unseen. They saw it, they would look at a Google map quick and make their offer. If they call, we always try and let them know like, hey, this is the zoning. Hey, have you considered access? Like the street drops down to gravel and then, we don't know the condition, out the Kings, some of those conditions of those roads. I mean, there's like drops and potholes and things like that, just to make sure that they've evaluated, before they purchase and make that kind of investment that they know that the egress may not be great. But that's the only way we can really catch it. And we can look at when we do the UDO rewrite, do we want to evaluate some of these lots that are on paper streets and see if we want to zone them in a lower density of some kind. But it seems like the board and the planning board has wanted to open up density more, even if that means it's on a private street, so.
No, I mean, I have no issues with density. I really am just, part of this, I'm thinking, I have a lot of questions, thinking out loud, different permutations, combinations, and looking ahead far beyond just today or tomorrow on that precedent setting. But that's the last of my questions.
Thank you.
Mark.
Hang on, I have 2 quick questions. And then Megan and then Evelyn. So the triggering event is the ADU. Without the ADU, you'd have permission to do everything you need to do. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, legally, we couldn't make them really do a whole lot out here. Now, we would add a note to the building permit and we would let the homeowner doing the construction know that we've got concerns with egress. But it's a platted lot by right. They can build a single family dwelling there.
So the question to the applicant or the resident would be, could you redesign the house so it's a single family house? Maybe with an extra entrance, so you take the ADU question out of the equation?
We've gone back and forth with the architect. We've changed the plans multiple times. But it's not our desire. We'd really like to see, we just wanted the opportunity to talk to you all and tell you the concerns we have, because the concerns have changed since the time we did all our research and did the purchase. So I don't want to, if we're not at that point to make that definitive answer, I don't want to say, yeah, we'll just build a 2,000 square foot house and put 6 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and, we're not looking to do big. We prefer to do the small.
And I believe the ODU now states that if there more than 4 lots, then that road has to be improved regardless. So now we're in a situation where even if we put the single house, we would have to make all of these concessions, take out all the trees, do all of these things. So
If we attach.
I think that's for like a new minor subdivision, if I'm not mistaken. So these are existing lots, on an existing private street, so that's not the case.
Okay.
Build a single family house.
And then my last question is, have you explored rather, I don't know that this would be of assistance, but asking for easement from one of the neighbors on Churton Street for access to the lot, so you don't have to.
I think we're driven by utilities have to come up from the paved side.
Yeah, that could come up in the platted right of way, that's fine. The divided right of way is still there, so you could put the utilities in the platted right of way and you'd be fine.
And then we'd be, if I'm understanding you, sir, we'd be cutting a new private road from the turn in North Churton Street.
I'm saying for the property owners to the east, if you is it of any use to negotiate an easement, a permanent easement from a different road?
I don't know if
I don't like that.
geographically, if anything fits in there. Cause you'd have to either come up the driveway of the one and cut over, or you'd have come to almost a complete stop to do a 90-degree turn to go up the hill between the two others. And you're turning on the curve there. It brings up some other congestion, traffic issues.
My property is landlocked, so I have an easement through my neighbor's property to get to my own. So just thought maybe that could be an assistance. Okay, Megan, and then Evelyn, and then I think maybe we could summarize this and ask staff some questions about it. Proceed.
Well, actually, part of my comment is about possible way to continue, but shouldn't have lost many notes. So when we discussed this before, this is one of the sections that I was against was this 5281B, which is for any ADU, now we've got to bring the street standard or the street up to our street standards. And for a few reasons, I did not want to include that. One of them being is that once these streets are up to standard, Hillsborough has no recourse in making sure that they stay up to standard. So 10, 15, 20 years down the line, if it's degraded back and there's tree shrubbery everywhere, we have no standing. So that was one reason. The other reason being is this property owner could build just as many bedrooms, kitchen, all that in one home. The neighbor next door could tear down their house, build the biggest one they could, the next one could, the next one could, the next one could. We could have a lot of people down that street and nothing would have to happen to that road at all. There would be no improvement that would be required by the town. Trying to see what else I had written down in my notes from prior. Oh, it's something just about the multiple, like, our town doesn't have the ordinance, I think that like Bryant was talking about in Durham, where the property owners of the adjacent private road have to have a covenant or something like that. That's not part of our ordinance, and when you have that private road, you need that cooperation. And we don't
It
have-
is for new streets.
For
It's just
new-
this
For new
is
street?
the whole
Okay,
existing.
okay,
paper
good.
street.
That
Yeah,
might
it-
not have been,
What would happen now if this McAdams offshoot Shrine Road
yeah,
was built today? There would be a maintenance agreement with all of the lots, but because this is so old,
okay.
they don't have that now.
So my question is to, I would say, remove that section out of both. It's under the dwelling accessory and under the freestanding, and then it's further down under within the principal single family dwelling would be my suggestion. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Evelyn.
This is, yeah, I've almost closed my thought. You said there was a house on the corner. And there was another house, or else a vacant lot and a house, and they were the fourth one, they would be the fourth house. Where would they be? Sorry, be this way. No, it's okay.
So there's a house here on the corner. Can you see my? This is McAdams. The house. This is the Shriners vacant lot. There's another house. Ooh. And then there's another vacant lot here. And then technically there's kind of a vacant lot here, but it's not really buildable. So really the primary lots you have are this one, this one, this one, this one. This one has like touches a little bit of this corner of this paved part.
Evelyn, does that answer the question? or
No, I
just-
can't, now I've gotten it upside down. Where's McAdams Road?
Right here.
Oh, over there, okay.
Yeah, so let's say you were leaving the annex. You would turn right, you'd sit forever at this light. And you would cross over, turn right up onto McAdams. And you would go up almost to the end. And then it's right here. You almost wouldn't even know this is here. It kind of just looks like a driveway that serves this. But it does keep going up because it also serves this
But their
house.
house is past the house past the.
There's two vacant lots. There's this
Two
vacant
vacant
lot and
lots.
this vacant lot. And there's two houses.
Is that house and two vacant lots after that? Why don't they find the vacant lot?
I think they've had quite enough of vacant lots. I don't think they'll ever buy another vacant.
Well, the reason I said that would give them a turn on. I'm trying to get them, I'll give this to the fire department, let them. They would.
Mull it over.
And that was another thing, somebody mentioned Corbin Street. If you're talking about the one that the Price is on, the one on the private street. That thing runs into a street behind them. When you go down the hill, there's a street behind them, so the fire department said they would go to them. With no trouble, because you can make a. There's a house down there, so that's not really, that's a private street, but they wanted a private street.
Yeah,
So the
there were a
street,
lot of
so the street
conversations.
behind them gives. The fire department said they would go regardless, they didn't care, they would go. So, I mean, that's no problem, ever a problem for anybody, if anybody, that should be recorded, I guess it's recorded that there's a street you could get to. And I don't want them to ever, cause I mean, I talked to her before she died, I talked to her at least once a week. So, about something. So I wanted that to always be clear in everybody's mind,
Thank you.
and I wish it were this for them.
So Shannon, let's see if we can kind of summarize where we are and what the request is and provide the appropriate direction to staff. Sounds like there are at least 4 things that are being asked, only 2 of which are actually in the town's purview. One of which is the water lines, which Brian has said, yeah, it's just costly, but more money to do it another way. So it sounds like there's only one real issue that's outstanding, that the town can't do anything about.
Yeah, it sounds like Bob made the suggestion to possibly pursue variance, and it sounds like Commissioner Darab suggested removing requirements for private streets to have to be upgraded for ADUs.
Matt's got.
Well, that question, I would also say. Commissioner Ferguson was like, you've not had any questions and whatnot, and it's, Megan satisfied some of those, but I would agree, I mean. Going back and looking at when we talked about this and in October of 2021 and the overriding, y'all kind of made all my arguments from previous meetings because. You know, I mentioned in that meeting, well, you know. The fire department can override that, but we're not gonna do it for trash trucks. When we talked about Burnside, when we, you know, and I just said that was a townwide policy decision to be making. And we're making these exceptions to this. And then, yeah, but because it was an attached ADU or UDO or ADU, sorry, getting it also mixed up in my head. That, you know, that was the only distinction is that it was attached versus detached. And then we had that come up again when we changed it, but then we upped all these additional requirements that if it had been attached under the previous ordinance, you wouldn't have to do it to begin with. So I think we have created a circle of doom on our own. And we should just do what, you know, match our ordinance with what our intentions are. We can't think 250 years down the road. And the simplest and easiest way, just get rid of it.
That text,
Yeah.
specific text note. And you're saying you can do with text note?
We could do it with the UDO rewrite, or we could do it with a text amendment currently. But to be clear, that would mean that we don't require private streets to be brought up to the private street standards for ADU, so you can build an ADU regardless of what your egress is.
Dirt footpath,
Dirt footpath,
fire.
helicopter, no fire.
I just want to remind the board, I mean, back when we did the text amendment in on October 24, there were competing interests. I mean, one is public safety. Bring the road up to standard because it's a public safety issue. The other is allowing more density, so allowing the detached or attached units. Then there was water and sewer concerns, making sure the water lines and the sewer lines could get there and can be up to standard. So, you say like there's a simple solution, well, just eliminate that requirement. But gotta remember the other interests that you were considering at the time you made the change.
Didn't we put in there stuff about the water though also on top of that one? Like in here, I thought we had it separately, it wasn't underneath. It's not part of the design standards, right? It's for the water. I
A
thought.
lot of the water and sewer requirements are in the town code.
I think there was.
This been adopted as part of the town code, the water and sewer specifications are part of the town code.
And there was an addition, like I think at the very end about having like a platted deeded easement and that the
Yeah.
line would be upsized if required. That was added at the very end of the ADU section.
Yeah.
5.2.8, I think it's at the very bottom.
Okay.
So it was difficult to satisfy all the interests, and maybe it was impossible, but it was very difficult, and we wound up doing, I think, the best job we could with what we had at the time.
Okay, so we had two commissioners who are saying, let's just get rid of it.
Well, just the one section right now. I'd have to look at it again, just.
Are we in a position to try and figure out if we have consensus on this, or do we want to ask staff to come back with a concise set of options with a clear direction on the ramifications of each of those things at our next meeting?
Yeah, that's.
I would really like that because I don't want to make policy based on one person. That's unintended consequences. I need to know more because I don't feel confident.
It sounds like staff needs to gather more information, confirm more with EMS and fire. And also explore the option of variance as the town attorney suggested with the applicant and bring you back some more information at your next. That what I'm hearing?
Or if you're, it may be the meeting after that. I don't wanna, you may need more time. So but as soon as.
Maybe it's like a 4-day turnaround from one meeting to a next for packet.
Well, good job, thank you. Okay.
Thank you for your
Are we
time
in
tonight.
agreement? That's the way to go? Okay, thank you very much.
you.
Your report, your information, your situation is very important to us, and hopefully we'll have some kind of resolution or path forward in a week or two.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, item C, budget approval for 2025 Leadership Chapel Hill Carver program. Rob and Megan would like to attend that, and we need to authorize spending the funds to do that.
So.
Second.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kathleen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that takes us to our new agenda item, feedback regarding Central Pines request for information about legislation and development. See, Matt, come with the photos. Matt.
So you all have some draft information at your.
I just want to share it.
At your seats. This was also sent by email earlier today. And I think the previous discussion illustrates why, a blanket policy on land use regulation in the entire state of North Carolina is what we see to be a bad idea. There are a lot of what ifs and, local flavor to developments. So what you have before you tonight is, there you go. an attempt to bring some clarity to the specific bills that were called out by Central Pines Regional Council. Make no mistake, these are not the only bills that are challenging. These are a specific set that we were asked for feedback on. And so what we've tried to prepare for you all are some broad themes that illustrate the impact or potential impact of these proposed bills on development regulation in the town. And then the memo goes out to pull out like specific things that are detrimental to the town and illustrates where possible specific instances of complications that would arise here in town. So what I've got up on the screen are some proposed themes for the board to discuss and evaluate. And the ask is if the board would like us to respond to Central Pines and to the League of Municipalities on your behalf, that you sort of coalesce around these themes, let staff fill in the details on one pager and get them back to our representative. Happy to answer any questions on the memo. Bryant and Shannon can also pitch in.
Thank you. Kathleen.
First of all, thank you. I think absolutely staff, I do think, with General Assembly, still needs to have some sort of signature of our board, each elected person. This is one of those cases where the elected members responding to elected members really matters. In addition to staff, and having the two together is about as strong as we can have it.
So then is the request that whatever we send back.
We just have,
has signatures on the board?
has our name, our name
We can search for
signature,
that.
Attached to it. One of the things, I'm almost done. One of the things, there's a few things that you're probably not gonna use this language, but just in case, and I'm gonna highlight it about, it's not enough time to effectively review a project or process is expeditious 4 to 6 months. That will be a red bull flag in front of the legislature. It's not enough to have time. You have to put it into, and it doesn't need to be exact. It's gonna be 460 labor hours to do that in 14 days of a staff of 3. That communicates it is impossible. But to tell them it takes 4 to 6 months, the legislature is gonna go, then remove your damn requirements. And about that bluntly. So we've got to think that some of this a little strategically and when we respond back, we can't one of the things, readiness, not resilience. Those are code words. The legislature wants to see readiness, fiscal responsibility, wants to see, the economic development, that sort of thing. But if sustainability, we will get axed. There's no listening to it. Even though readiness and sustainability means the same, they don't hear it the same. So there's some pieces like that.
Okay.
And I will be quiet because I know Matt has some.
So I have a question actually. So I think there were, 6 pieces of legislation listed, but I did not see a direct reference to SB 587.
From staff's perspective, there's not a specific objection to that bill other than kind of the blanket objection to preemption of local control. And that's one that deals specifically with nonconformities. The spirit behind that legislation seems to be emanating from out west. And so, generally when you have non-conforming uses and they're destroyed greater than 50%, you're not allowed to build them back to where they were. And so our assumption is there are a lot of those cases in Western North Carolina, and this was a Moffitt sponsored bill out of Buncombe County. And so our assumption is that bill really deals with that. And so from a staff perspective, that's sort of the least damaging of these bills, is that we didn't have a specific response on that one.
And I think you kind of alluded to it. So basically, once a lot, in this case, let's say storm of the century came in, washed it away, there might be various new zoning regulations put onto that lot. It now no longer complies with those regulations, and so in the rebuild. Maybe it's that you have to replace a formerly large home with something significantly smaller, or
Yeah.
the amount of impervious.
Bob or Shannon, feel
Surface.
free to weigh in, but essentially, if you have a non-conforming use that's destroyed, you can't build it back to what it was. You have to build it to current
Right.
standards.
And I think the legislation is trying to say, using the Western North Carolina example, if you have an old store that was built right up on the road front, and it's in a district now where the setback is 20 feet, you're like, with the new legislation, you'd be allowed to build the store back the way it was, right up on the road front, where under today's rules, if the building had been damaged to the extent of more than 50% of its value, it couldn't be built back. So it's trying to preserve or allow the preservation of some of the, I'll call it the atmosphere, the ambiance of some of those smaller.
If I could just add, if you look in that bill, a lot of the language is focused on outdoor advertising and signage. And so it's clear where the influence is. It's from Lennar and the other billboard companies. They want to be able to build back what they had that may be existing non-conforming. And so that's one of the other major drivers in that bill.
So I want to go with a specific example, because I remember this came up. So, and Bryant, that may have been one of your first meetings, when you came on staff, but we adopted some sort of ordinance, I can't remember exactly what, for the Tier Quarry watershed, if I'm not mistaken. And a gentleman from Forest Ridge came in and had a concern that because of questions about the impervious surface and some other things, that if his house burned down and he had to replace it, that he might not be able to replace it with the exact same size structure as he had before. And I don't think our answer at the time was no. It may have been maybe. So would 587 potentially override what that issue was in that situation, where his lot no longer, that structure no longer would conform?
It's a similar situation. I mean, we ended up not even doing the full tier 40 thing, but yeah, I mean, it's essentially, so, you know, Bob's example is great, Bill Ford example is great. It's just a lot of ordinances as standards say that if it's damaged, you know, by an act of nature or act of God, depending on when your ordinance was written, that if it's damaged over 50%, you have to build it conforming versus building it back non-conforming. And it's just to basically start to phase out over time non-conforming uses and structures. And so that when you do build them back, you have to build them conforming. They're probably, I imagine, having a lot of challenges with that, with Helene and possibly other natural disasters that have happened, hurricanes and things over the years, where if you lose the whole building and it's gone, and you've got a little tiny lot and you basically, that building went the whole way to the edge of the lot, and it can't anymore, then you just can't kind of recoup and be able to rebuild the way that you could before. I don't have a whole lot of concern about that here in Hillsborough. Read through the bill, you know, we're pretty lenient on the non-conforming stuff anyways. You have to discontinue a use for a pretty extended period of time to not be able to do it back and things like that. So I would say that just our ordinance being older and a little bit more outdated, we're pretty lenient on the non-conformities.
So on this one, the feedback would be no immediate,
major
no
concern.
pressing, no likely relevant concerns or anything.
Yeah, and I think my feedback to Matt was that if we're gonna pick our battles, I don't think that's the battle to pick. There's some other more troubling things.
I did have a question for Commissioner Ferguson. You mentioned signing something, you mean
Well,
us?
Meaning having our names on it so that it's staff and electeds. So when it comes, whether it's mailed from staff, whether it's mailed from Mayor Bell, I actually think it's more powerful when we're all in this. It is this professional staff and electeds together, united front. This is problematic, different reasons. But that is a whole lot stronger. But definitely be elected. But I did have one thing too about, you know, the SB 499 about the proposed letting residents everywhere. That is the time to throw them in. the data, you know, of it cost, you know, for every tax dollar, $1.25 to support residents versus the 86 cents commercial.
Okay.
This, again, that is real numbers, so you're setting us up for being upside down on tax dollars and for small towns like this that are you know, based on what usage is thrown and add in. We cannot connect to Durham for underneath and at what, you know, 15 years ago, water and sewer would have been what? Over $200 million. Oh, under,
It was only like 130.
oh, 100 million. But and that was then, but nowadays would be over 200, but we can cite that and those dollars, 130. That kind of numbers in two couple sentences, that has more power than we can't support it. This is why we can't support it. We're upside down.
Okay, so add more data to the themes.
It's things like that that demonstrate $120 million against a, you know, 13 million or $10 million. I always get my general fund and sewer fund reversed. That speaks numbers. You know, $1.25 versus 86. That's something they understand that. They may quibble with it. That's a whole different story, but at least we're putting that kind of data paper.
I would concur that the economic development benefit to the town would be decimated
Yes.
by that bill. So I think if anything, the legislature would pay attention to that.
But that puts real numbers to just how damaging.
Man,
One of the things I did want to point out about, Senate Bill 4499, because I did hear it from the horse's mouth, is that, Governor Stein is supportive of SB 499. He wants to see some tweaks and changes to it, but on two separate occasions, both within about a week apart, the governor himself and then one of his intergovernmental affairs folks did say that was something that he was supportive of, and it is a bipartisan bill, including I believe Senator Batch, who's the leader on the D side, being one of the, or maybe it's Senator Mayfield, I can't remember, being on that legislation.
It's damage is the damage, no matter how many people like it.
it's a problem.
But I would say that, do I think that there are some things that concern me, with clearing up language? I think you pointed out some of those, not reading such highly technical legislation, often as y'all do. There's things I think that could be clarified. I think the spirit of the legislation, a good chunk of it, I'm actually in support of. And I don't like preemption, but I do believe that there are policies that hold up. And I noticed one of the things you said in your summary is that there isn't direct mention of affordable housing or how to fund it and that sort of thing. But we do have to reckon with the fact that localities can go overboard with their regulation in a way that drives up the cost of land and shortchanges the stock of housing that drives up the costs. And in talking with Senator Batch and others about these pieces of legislation, that is really what they're trying to get to. And so we have to deal with land use if we're going to be serious about affordable housing and the regulations that we put on it. And if we don't, then we're not moving towards our hoped for policy goals. So if we did sign something, I wouldn't sign it unless it's worded to take into account some of that stuff that I just said. But I'm not in opposition in spirit to a lot of the legislation.
Can I have one additional point from staff? So, because you just raised it, something I probably should have added to the memo is, right now, our only tool for affordable housing is negotiation. If you make everything available by right, and there's not a level of negotiation, and there's not support from the state for inclusionary zoning, we lose the only tool we really have right now for new units. And so I would maybe clarify that in what we are saying is this limits our ability to negotiate for additional affordable.
Actually, it removes it. And we,
Market forces.
and the market doesn't work.
Megan, do you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions for improvement?
I did not see this before the meeting, so, I'm gonna go through it. Listen to what Commissioners Hughes and Ferguson have said, and I'll definitely get back to it. But I like the idea of what you mentioned, Kathleen, and if we all agree to it and everything, that would be powerful to have us all be united front.
There's a timeline, all right,
Yeah, that's why I said like,
Yes.
yeah, like
like tomorrow.
tomorrow. Yeah. Tonight.
I don't have any questions. I appreciate, the time that you guys have put into this and how quickly you're able to, put it together. And I appreciate it.
Well, especially for an email that went out on a Saturday morning. You know, I didn't know if Eric was back in town to see it, 'cause I know, and Matt, I don't know if you get also the messages from Lee, but I was like, oh, okay, and I looked and I saw by Friday, I'm thinking, we meet on Monday. So,
I think it was-
Herculean effort to pull it all together, so thank you.
Now, one thing is just governor's office already, you know, they may be wanting this, but you already heard through council that no. His electeds are not happy. So there's some, I have a feeling.
Let me just say,
There-
amongst the black elected officials who heard him, all of us were pretty excited about it.
There's a, it's gonna be very lively.
I can tell you from the North Carolina Mayor's Association that we are on fire about this issue more than any other issue I've seen in the past 15 months. So, they are very eager to spread the word that municipalities should go on the record with their thoughts on these proposed legislation. So my question is, you have provided us some talking points. You have provided a draft resolution. What is your feeling for how to proceed to refine the message and to be able to provide to Kathleen and Matt for to give to Lee to meet the deadline? What are your?
Actually, my recommendation is when we agree, get her done. If it's the last version of we're happy with is you, send it. If it's with you, send it. Just
So,
get her done.
so is your thought then, Kathleen, to direct staff to refine this memo with this conversation in mind? I would like to see another version before blessing it by email.
I agree.
Before that, is that acceptable to everyone?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Matt? Hughes?
Well, if that's someone mentioned a resolution, I thought, well.
Yeah, there is a resolution.
So is that
It was easy.
right, well, so is that in regards to the draft response about circulating that around?
I guess I'm giving a menu of options. So we're
Okay.
doing draft. Are we gonna discuss this now and then fine tune it over the next 24 hours or so by email and then bless it by email? Is that the path the board would like to take, or would the board like to also consider a resolution that is?
Sorry, I
passed?
thought you all had these.
Okay, I'm like,
Now, I do think.
Peter dies.
So what my understanding is that we refine our thoughts that are reflected in the resolution. So right now, there's no data in the resolution, so it'd be built into the resolution.
I was not thinking that. So
Because
I'm thinking there's two different things. So we want to pass a resolution and as well as give thoughts to Central Pines or.
I think both have. I think both have to happen. The resolution, and certainly on record, Central Pines. my understanding from Lee is the resolution and our thoughts are both are what are being passed on to county commissioners, you know, the state association, the county commissioners and the league. So both pieces.
I thought he was just asking, have you passed one?
I think the question was, you
I
know,
may have misunderstood, but my,
if we,
because I had thought that
reread
he
it,
wanted.
I actually thought of it similar to you, Kathleen, it was something public and in the public record,
And I thought he wanted a copy of whatever resolutions we passed. In
well, he
addition
was
to our
interested
thoughts.
in our positions on the bills and the potential impacts. I kind of look that as having a definitive, we have an official board sanctioned, viewpoint on the legislation.
And in the conversation during the meeting,
I think someone mentioned
I want
something
to,
about
I want to
resolution.
say is to share the resolution.
If your locality has taken a position, please provide me with the adopted resolution or general feedback.
So, Mr. Mayor, to your question, you know, the board can do any different way. What I was thinking tonight is resolutions available if that's something of interest to you all to take a position. There's a drafted resolution. The themes for response is really what we were asking for. Like, do you want to hit these themes? Are there different themes? Do you want to get into greater detail or do you want to keep it more general? And I'm hearing you want more detail. The supporting information in the packet was more for you all's information, not intended to go into the memo, letter, whatever we produce. And then lastly, the other question we were asking for feedback is in addition to our objections, there is a potential, so, you know, additional consideration that, you know, we support the efforts to modernize, reform land use regulations, but we want to be a part of it. We're asking the General Assembly to form a task force, a working group, whatever they want to call it, have representatives from the legislature, the local governments, and the development community so that we work together rather than having something imposed upon us. And that's something that Eric and the mayor suggested as a potential add so that we're not coming in as just a detriment. We just don't want it, but okay, we're willing, but can we do it together?
I mean, I certainly support, you know, I support that. I do, I mean, having the resolution and having the detail shared. I mean, but again, that detail, that's gotta be communicated very clearly. And giving that detail to the league, to the county official, I mean, it just strengthens. You know, the other piece, and I don't know if I noticed that, but there's also subject to liability individually. That is one thing, you know, electeds, that's more and more, you know, as a board. You're no longer, you know, that's a whole different level of coercion, frankly.
Yes, ma'am. That is called out in the resolution as, you know, something that's detrimental to public process, both on the elected officials and the appointed boards.
Yeah, because that's the other thing, are volunteers, the whole 9 yards. So.
Right, so how are we feeling about the resolution? Has everybody had a chance to read it? Does it sound aerodynamic? Sounds cooperative and level-headed. I don't think it's out of bounds in any way. How about it? Okay, and then regarding the do we need additional talking points for the league? Would this resolution suffice to answer the question?
No, I
You
don't
want
think so.
more detail?
That data. It's, this doesn't tell you, they need to be able, when a lobbyist or sitting in
Yeah,
front.
I got it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Preaching to the choir. Okay, so it sounds like, we would like for you to proceed with a more detailed, explanation of our thinking. Using the language that we have discussed, that we know will resonate with our friends of the General Assembly. And if there is a motion to, pass this resolution, I would accept
So
that.
moved.
I have a question about.
Okay. All right.
Okay, hang on, well, let's. Motion, who's, sorry, Kathleen,
I just did. because-
motion, all right, yeah, we can discuss that.
Second, you
Okay,
want
everyone
to-
second, now we can discuss, so Matt, go ahead.
So on the official copy, does it? I don't remember having to do this. On the official copy, unlike an ordinance, it doesn't record the number of yays and nays on a resolution, does it?
We still defer to start on this. Does it record the votes on a resolution with the?
It's just signed by the mayor.
Okay, any other questions?
What
Okay,
y'all are trying to do?
okay, all in favor?
Right.
All opposed?
Nay.
Thank you, Matt, we'll look for your email, in just 24 hours or so. You don't have to work on it tonight, you can do it tomorrow. Thank you, and so when you receive this from Matt, please, what's the appropriate way to do this? Should I handle the comments and synthesize them to give them to you?
That might be helpful. I'll get with Eric and talk about how
Okay,
works best.
okay, thank you. But when you do get any emails tomorrow, please respond quickly so we can process that. Great, thank you, and thank you staff for the impromptu consideration to help us figure out. Okay, committee updates and reports. Megan, let's start.
No committee updates from the last meeting. I've got, the UNRPA is coming up, not this week, but the following week. And then tomorrow starts City Vision.
Are you going?
Yeah. That's all my kids right now.
Thank you. Well,
I have no updates.
I have two updates. One is, attended the TPO meeting on the 22nd. And the main highlight for that was the board adopted the, safety action plan. It's a policy document. And then we will likely invite, Doug Lachesky to come, speak to us to kind of give us a summary. Second thing, was, the Hillsborough Arts Council inaugurated the new Hillsborough Poet Laureate that last Friday night. I had her name written down, I'm blanking. And then we'll invite her to come to a board meeting and read a poem. She's very inspiring. I was very impressed by the Amir Hassan. That's her name.
What's just the first female laureate with that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's all.
And didn't we, provide them some funding for that?
We funded it, and Hillsborough Arts Council did the process and was creating the programming and.
Well, my main thing is we've already acted on. So in Council of Governments, we passed our budget. Definitely continue the federal impact, which we all know. I anticipate as things progress, we will hear more requests coming out and a lot of back and forth. It's pretty scary. We all know that. I just want to say thank you for the support that y'all have. Sorry, because I'll get emotional with my dad. Right now he's in a good phase. So rock and roll, take that. His will is strong. After City Vision, I'll have to go back because I am the primary caregiver. He cannot be by himself. Unfortunately, it's one of those cases that, if he's still unemployed, it actually gives me the chance to be with him, but it also means, with both my mom and assisted living, I've just gotta be here. This is a case where financially, not many options. So I really appreciate y'all's support and, it's hard not being around a lot, but It's just been, I really appreciate it just being the time to spend with them. So, sorry, but thank you.
When I text you, I'm trying not to ask the question of how are you doing?
No,
'Cause-
please do, it's okay.
No, I don't, because I think that's sometimes a burdensome question and loaded, but I just want you to know that you crossed my mind. And, you know, that's why I say, is there anything I can do? Because I
You
feel
know-
like that's a little bit more utilitarian than how are you doing?
It's actually okay, sometimes listening is what you can do, and sometimes that's what's needed.
Well, you pour out a lot to a lot of folks.
I will say, I got your postcard today from when you were in.
Finally.
I was like, just in time for the meeting.
Awesome.
But, yeah, no, it's okay to ask, it's one of those. Some days are good and some days it ain't so good.
All right, so as Commissioner Darrow mentioned, City Vision starts tomorrow, so very excited. You should get excited. Your first,
I know
Your
it is
first
gonna
one.
rock.
I'm not
really-
packed yet, so I'm not that worried.
you're not like,
I'm not packed at all yet.
I haven't
so
done
I'm
laundry, so we're on the same page.
Okay.
So I'll be leaving
Um,
tonight and I'm packed in the car.
So, we have that this week. Last, or 2 weeks ago, rather, the Visitors Bureau, met and, just some concern about a funding crunch, because, the occupancy tax, as it's set up, is set up, a lot differently, for Chapel Hill. Of course, the county is 3%. The county is 3%, and the amount that Chapel Hill has to spend of their occupancy tax is a much smaller amount for tourism promotion, and so they seem to be going down to the statutory minimum that could actually take about $300,000 out of the Visitors Bureau's budget if they implement that. So that's of concern. The Mexican and Turkish national teams are coming to Chapel Hill this summer in July. I think it's July, and so we're seeing some, you know, how to promote that a lot more. Ticket sales aren't quite where they want them to be. But this is the third year of that soccer tournament, and of course, we get an economic benefit out of that as well. I think it'll be fine from what I've heard. Other cities that have hosted the Mexican national team to typically sell a lot of tickets. Just sometimes comes a little slower, but Salt Lake City is another city that's hosting. I think it's the exact same matchup, and they're a lot further along on their ticket purchases. So, you know, that's kind of the biggest thing that was on the docket for that. The mayor's already covered MPO. I did go to the COG in person this week or last week. I wasn't sure you were available, and but I also wanted to go. I had the free night to not sit on Zoom and listen in.
The World University Games.
Yeah, and we also heard about the World University Games in 2029. We added a new jurisdiction, Taylortown in Moore County. That's the 50th jurisdiction, and there's only one left, and that town is Four Oaks. And so we're up to 50 members. When we took over, there were only 37 members at the time. And to have it down to one, I think is pretty big.
We will be getting and be 100%. I expect that, and it will be this year.
On the budget hearing, federal is really hurting, impacting, as Commissioner Ferguson said, of interest though is the elimination of ombudsman to work with the senior population, and that's something that will impact the entire region. And also how indirect costs are applied. There's a belief that will be capped at 15% for federal grants and other things as well. If that happens, it would be almost a 2/3 cut to the overhead administration of the COG, and it might be really hard to make up that funding. Just upping dues would be almost astronomical for some of the communities. And it would impact having 51 members.
Oh, it would.
But we did conclude that hearing, and what really blew me away is kind of like what we do here at Hillsborough. We do a lot, but it's not a lot of staff. I think the problem is, well, not a lot of staff and not enough budget. But what really blew me away is unlike the state and the feds and local government, they're that missing level of government, and so they don't get a lot of the credit. But Lee did say, come on, municipalities and counties, we see you put out the RFP, we can do a lot of this for you for free, and you don't have to do an RFP, so it was good to see all the work that they're doing.
And just to, now the ombudsman, now one of the things that we've been told potentially, because the General Assembly is looking at that, may come under, it may come under disaster relief, it may come elsewhere. There's a glimmer of hope that we'll get support for that program state level, but definitely the federal, really bad. And one of the things about the dues, dues comprise 2% of the comp budget. But that's what's turned into, it's that each dollar of dues converted into 38. That's the leverage ratio, because that's what's used for the match monies, and what allows them to do the technical support and services for the local governments. And without that match, they would not be able to function.
Thank you. Evelyn?
The board the board members passed the budget, but it has to go to the county. I think they want to raise, the rural tax for a penny, that's what I think. I don't know what they'll do, but I'll find that on the 15th.
Okay.
And it was so meeting. There's a lot of arguing.
That sounds like a contentious board.
Well. Yeah, maybe I don't have a vote, I have no vote, which makes it hard. But that's the way the charter is. Eric had nothing to do with it. He wasn't here. Oh no, we have a new charter, but it says the same thing.
You know.
Yes.
I didn't see the data.
I'm sorry.
That one
Evelyn,
is complete.
Evelyn, are you through?
I'm
Any
just-
other?
Yeah,
Right.
I know, I just completely moved through it. I failed to mention that on Friday I met with the Girl Scouts, we all were eager to go see them, and they were very excited about that. They had not picked an animal that we would like to try to help, but they were talking about waterfowl, deer came up. I mentioned vultures for them just for fun. But they are putting together a play that will be on May 18th. I also told them to go to our website and use the tool to contact your commissioners as much as they want, because we love them to get that. So it was a great meeting, and I'm glad they invited us. I want to shout out to them if they're watching.
I got one last thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so I forgot our last Parks and Recreation Board meeting, we were fortunate to have both Terry and Brian, and they, again, were focusing on Riverwalk, master plan, so they shared well, not all of, but a lot of their knowledge, with all the challenges basically for utilities and, water and sewer on Riverwalk. Doing anything along those, it's complicated. But it was very, very good to have both of them in the house at the same time, or the meeting at the same time, because they're both very knowledgeable about what they do.
Oh, I forgot one other thing, sorry.
Okay.
I probably can be the last. Habitat, Farm to Table, their fundraising was Saturday night, went really well. They raised some money, of course, they need more because construction costs are insane. But a lot of that is gonna be supporting Honor Village, so it supports Hillsborough. And I'm sitting actually with one of the fundraising board members specifically for Honor Village. So y'all break out your checkbooks for Habitat, make Honor Village a reality. Really needed.
And there will be a groundbreaking in next month for Almond Village, so look for an invitation from Jennifer Player and I forgot the date, but.
It's not.
Yes. And also Eric, I'll talk to you about some options for the poet laureate to come and do a presentation. Her name is Amal Gassir. I mispronounced her name, but Amal means. Okay, you will be impressed, I guarantee.
I have an odd question. An out of the blue question. Has everyone received an email about free flags or banners for the 250th?
Free?
Yes, free.
I would have
I got one and it was like free and I'm like, what? I will send it to you and it's like, there's gotta be small print, but. And it's specifically for municipalities.
Thank you. Okay. So if there's nothing else for the good of the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Kathleen, thank you, Evelyn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those. Have a good night.
How they do?